The book's pages fluttered to the beginning once again, faster than before, and he fell. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced, or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert, as tempting as it was to explore ancient mysteries. There was a war going on, and also, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Of course, Reynardo had a pretty strong suspicion that Lupino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Reynardo really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces. What could have brought them to light? This Emperor, Isengrim III, had once been kind, but he'd gone mad. And now he was conducting secret, obscene rituals to bring back the lost gods. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the earth? It was more than Reynardo could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Reynardo couldn't help feeling a bit curious. Was Lupino still waiting to be rescued? No. He was probably drinking champagne with the ravens. Did ravens drink champagne? Did rabbits? Reynardo felt oddly thirsty, come to think of it. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? Reynardo never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it? Reynardo hated gogglers, but it freaked him out to cut them. That had been his mistake before, trusting his old friend Lupino, who'd been through so many battles with him and shared so many heartaches, who he'd rescued so many times. What was up with that guy anyway? Who wants to die first? Give me a lever, said Archimedes, and I shall open a gate. Fresh socks, thought Reynardo. Please be fresh socks. There it was. Skyripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway. The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Skyripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. Reynardo asked himself why he changed course to confront Zenobia. He'd no idea. Sometimes he would just do things, and he could never figure out why he'd done them. Usually, they worked out. After all, he was a hero. The truth is, though, he wanted to see her, wasn't it? It had been a dozen years since Swordfu School. He'd followed every rumor about her, every scrap of news. Not that he still loved her. After all, she was his enemy. No, it was solely because, know your enemy. All right, maybe he should stop pretending. He knew exactly how she felt about him. But their love affair always ended with a tragic death. Unless, maybe he could find a way to dodge tragedy. Surely he could, couldn't he? Zenobia was leading the Imperial Ravens here. She loved to be in the vanguard, where the danger was, where she needed her wits. Reynardo pitied whoever she was fighting, especially if it was him. What was the point of this gate? Reynardo wasn't entirely sure how he was going to capture Zenobia. She'd be expecting him. And he didn't have Lapino to cook up a clever plan. Why was it again that he hadn't got the core? Reynardo slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. Where were her guards? Finally, he reached her bedroom. She was curled up on her bed. Oh, he'd forgotten how beautiful she was. How sleek, how soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She vanished, and he suddenly noticed He couldn't move except his mouth. In fact, Sudi couldn't keep his mouth shut. He told Zenobia everything. Skyripper, the rebellion plans, even where the secret rebel base was, until he was hoarse. It was some kind of truth spell. A talky truth spell. She called her father by Farspeaker Toad and filled His Majesty in.
But why didn't he get the core?
Croaked the Farspeaker in something like His Majesty's croak. Because I missed you, darling. Reynardo grinned. He doesn't even know why, frowned Zenobia.
That makes no sense. It's a trap,
shouted the Emperor.
I'll meet you at the outpost, and I'll bring my interrogators.
If Reynardo came face to face with the Emperor, maybe he could assassinate him. But maybe it would be smarter and safer to turn Zenobia against her father. You're lying, she said. Somehow you're lying. The spell hadn't worn off yet. He had to tell the truth. The trick was in making sure she wouldn't believe it. The core is perfectly safe, he said. And he tried his hardest to sound sincere. In fact, I almost went to get it myself. Fine then, interrogators it is, she said angrily. I gave you a chance. The Emperor's interrogators were not especially gentle, even by weasel standards. Fortunately, Zenobia had locked him in the guest quarters on her ship, and she'd forgotten it had a toilet that, like all skyship toilets, could be vented into the abyss. This was not the sort of slippery fox he wanted to be. But just as they were about to land, he threw the latch, wrinkled his nose, and leapt through the open latrine. It was a short, safe landing. At least this part of the Nexus hadn't changed too much. Zenobia had been taking him to the Imperial outpost. She'd never expect him to go there by himself. Well, maybe she would. Never knew with her. No skateboarding, the sign said. Reynardo knew Zenobia, and Zenobia knew him. She'd suspected a trick. Now he'd vanished. She would probably guess that was his plan all along. Perfect. Maybe she wouldn't use the Skyripper. At least not without taking it to the scientists at the observatory first. Meanwhile, the Emperor would be coming to the outpost personally. This could be good. Reynardo was face to face with the Emperor's bodyguard. They looked very tough, but the Emperor held them back.
Oh, where's my daughter?
And how would I know that? Reynardo grinned at him.
She lured me here so that you could kill me, didn't she?
Ah, don't be ridiculous, said Reynardo, trying his best to sound convincing. She loves you.
Oh, I knew it. The rabbit told me I couldn't trust her.
The Emperor hopped out the door. His phalanx of bodyguards retreated carefully. Reynardo heard someone call, "Arrest her!" as they left. Well, that's a job well done, thought Reynardo. Now the fleet would be in all sorts of disarray. But maybe he could find her in the mountains. She always used to go to the mountains to hide from the world. Maybe he could even turn her against her father. Or maybe he could reap the benefits of the chaos he had sown. It was time to report to the Rebel Council, and then launch the attack on a divided and very confused Imperial fleet. Reynardo was very proud of himself. He'd told the Empire everything, but now they didn't believe anything, and it looked like the Emperor didn't trust his daughter anymore either. There were some advantages to having a slippery reputation, weren't there? Reynardo wondered if he'd really fooled the Empire. He guessed he'd know soon enough. If the skies darkened with 1,000 dropships, then he'd know the Empire believed his map of the Rebel base's secret location. They certainly seemed to be looking for it. There were ravens everywhere. But where weren't there ravens these days? He missed her. Not Zenobia. Hypatia, the kid's mother. Reynardo had never thought he'd date a librarian. He'd always figured himself for the barmaid type. But then, he'd never figured the library of Ubar would have comic books, or that Hypatia would know anything about them. He missed her. Maybe the Emperor would attack Zenobia. The ravens, divided into two armies, would slaughter each other. And the rebellion could just show up and claim victory. The council would be overjoyed that Reynardo had given away all their secrets. See? It was actually very fine weather, except for the occasional shower of ravens. And no one was burning the ruins down with the mighty power of a god's eye. If the Empire believed anything he'd said, they certainly weren't showing it. Sleep tight, thought Reynardo. See? With enough leverage, you could go anywhere. The long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good. Have to stop. As he told his hilarious adventures to the rebel council, he began to realize they weren't laughing, just staring at him with those big bug eyes.
Zenobia let you escape?
Asked the speaker.
How do we know you're not a double agent?
Then I wouldn't tell you about her at all.
Maybe you're trying to sound like an idiot, so we don't realize how clever you are,
croaked the speaker. No, I promise you, I really am that much of an idiot, Reynardo was about to say when a half-dozen Imperial ships began to bomb the base.
He's betrayed us,
croaked the toads, and Reynardo decided it would be good to be somewhere else. He boarded the Farfarer and got out of there. The wind ruffled Reynardo's fur the wrong way. So the rebels thought he was lying too? Because a half-dozen lousy dropships that probably just tripped over the rebel base? Okay, technically he had betrayed its location, but not willingly. And he'd made up for it, hadn't he? Then something exploded. A cannon shot. The Farfarer plunged out of the clouds. The rebels had hit his ship. As the Farfarer plummeted towards the abyss, he launched himself into the sails of an Imperial ship. The Farfarer was gone. It had been a beautiful ship, and fast. It could do the Kestrel run in 12 furlongs, or so the salesman had told him. He would show them. He would be the hero of the final battle. They'd know whose side he was on then. That's what it meant to be a hero. To go on fighting, even when both sides were trying to kill you. What's behind door number 2? See? Rebels were fighting ravens everywhere, and not a super weapon in sight. No one was summoning giant murder birds out of the clouds. There were no locusts, no rain of fire. Something blew up nearby, and Reynardo decided it was not time to stop and ponder. Just as well. He liked acting much better than pondering. This would be the perfect place for a tic-tac-toe board. Finally, Reynardo reached the Emperor's ship, and there he saw a strange sight. Zenobia being led in shackles by Lapino with a squad of ravens. What? Lapino was working with the ravens? Was he some sort of traitor? Of course Lapino was working with the ravens. But The Emperor still thought Zenobia was a traitor? Reynardo felt oddly bad about that. Should he run down there and rescue her? Oh, but she was the enemy. Then he heard a whistling sound. He looked straight up and saw a rebel ship. It was dropping rather large bombs. One of them kept getting bigger as it fell. Huh? Oh. He should go back to some of the choices he'd faced before. Maybe there were new paths that had opened up, like those doors he was opening up all over the map that took him to new treasures and around his enemies. And he hadn't learned anything new this time. He'd done the same thing twice, yet expected a different outcome.